Okay, welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake. And today my guest is J.P. Behrens, and we'll be talking about his book Murder in the Monashee Mountains. I hope I got that right.
I believe so. Monashee is the way I say it, but
Okay, Monashee Mountains.
I'm not from the Washington State, so I'm sure one of us is getting it right and wrong.
Yeah, and we apologize for any mistakes there.
Yeah, I looked up the spellings, not the pronunciation. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm currently working on a Norse book, and yeah, I don't even want to attempt the pronunciations there. So,
No.
so anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself. So take it away.
J.P. Behrens, author of the Travis Daniels investigation series and Portrait of a Nuclear Family, and my collection of short fiction. I also have a Substack and a Patreon. On my Patreon, I'm doing short stories and a chapter a month on a new thriller, weird thriller that I'm pantsing, which I've learned that I hate pantsing. It's the worst. And that's about it. And then just working on some more fantasy stuff for the future, and working on Travis Daniels 3 right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on pantsing. I had to pants my current book that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I hated every minute of it.
Yeah, I don't like it. I will never do it again. Once this
Yeah,
project is done, I've already told everybody, I'm like, this is now a rough draft. Deal with it. I don't know what's going on. I will never do this again. It is a nightmare.
yeah. We plotters don't like pantsing at all. I can say to
Oh
tell you that.
no, it is rough. I do not like it.
No. Okay, so give everyone a quick overview of the book.
So yeah, the new book, it starts roughly a year after the first book ends. Um, Travis is on the run with a companion. I'm trying to think how to say this without ruining the first book if you haven't read it yet. He's on the run. He's got a companion with him this time, so it's not a solo adventure. While on the run, something happens. It makes it so that he is afraid that he's going to get found. They run a little bit further, end up in Washington State, and they kind of stumble across a murder mystery. At which point, they now have to solve said murder mystery to prevent a massive war between Native American werewolves, Canadian Sasquatch, and a town dependent upon a lumber operation that's headed up by a very greedy lumber baron.
Okay, that sounds interesting. So, as you said, this is the second book in your Travis Daniels investigation series. So, when you started writing book two, did you find it more difficult, easier, and what was it like slipping back into that world?
Well, it was different because the first book is Lovecraft. It's very much Lovecraft. The second book is definitely making a hard turn into Raymond Chandler sort of PI territory, but still with all the supernatural werewolves and Sasquatch. So and then playing with the characters was fun, and I'm so used to writing like Travis. I really understand that character pretty well, and as I'm doing the stories, I'm just kind of progressing his character, helping him grow a little bit with each story because he's still trying to get a handle on this supernatural world that he doesn't want any part of. So there's still that fun bit to it. But yeah, it was a much different book because I was also dealing with real towns, real Native American tribes, and things like that. So there was a ton of research to make sure that I was getting it right and making sure that like because I used even traditional Silix language in the book. So that was like that took a great deal of research as well to make sure I got the spelling right, the alphabet right, and I definitely did not make things easy on the layout person for this book because of that.
Okay, so what were some of the inspirations behind the plot of this one?
I was, the inspiration was really I needed to do something that would help define the series that wasn't the first book. So the first book was missing persons, but really, kind of traveling and introducing a Lovecraftian world. But the second book needed to be okay, this is going to definitely be more of a mystery, but it's also going to be not Lovecraftian. It's going to be folklore. It's going to be, monsters. So it was going to be werewolves and folklore and cryptozoology. I want to make sure that in the first few books, I'm defining a large world with a lot of stuff in it. It's not just going to be cosmic Lovecraftian horror. It's not just going to be monster creature features, and it's not just going to be this, that, or the other thing. It's going to be a wide range of supernatural elements that get mixed in with this crime series.
Mhm. Yeah. So, as you said, you step back from Lovecraft and into the world of cryptids and creatures with this one. So,
Mhm.
what exactly did you want to explore and twist with those legends and myths?
I just came up with the idea of what I really kind of fell in love with the idea of a civil war between werewolves and Sasquatch. And then I kind of just started from there. I was just like, how about I do this story where a Sasquatch and werewolf have to fight it out? And then it was like, okay, now how do I make this a crime? Okay, now how do I do this? And I started from that little seed and just started slowly layering things in until I got the larger story. And then once I had the larger story, I set up a timeline and I did like a whole layout of it to work out like, okay, this is the point in the story where you find the first clue. This is the point in the story where you find this. This is the red herring. This is this, and I really plotted it out like a crime book, like a mystery, and it helped a lot. And it was basically, and I just I made a mystery story, but instead of having the butler or this or that, I was just like, here's the Sasquatch, here's a werewolf, here's these things. They're the new characters. They're the new suspects. And then add in layers of like, well, why would people suspect these people? Why would this happen in this way? Like, why, what's everyone's motive involving this? So that it kind of organically came about as I was going. And then I found a bit of inspiration in Killers of the Flower Moon, which was I didn't watch the movie. I read the book, which was it's based on a true story, and a lot of what happens in this book is very loosely related to what happened to that tribe, but also what legitimately happened to the Washington State Native Americans, the Okanokans in Washington State, when half their reservation was taken by the U.S. government to be sold off to lumber and logging operations. So this also feeds off of things that legitimately happened in history at that point in time. So I wanted to play a little bit with, let me tell the story of these people, but also I'm making werewolves. I'm also shoving werewolves in there.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to be respectful, even though I'm shoving werewolves and Sasquatch. I wanted to be respectful of the story of these tribes and the suffering that these people had to go through uh, at that time.
Yeah, I am curious. Are there werewolf legends in around the Pacific Northwest? 'Cause, I mean, I know Sasquatch, but I've
Right. Yeah. Well, no. So not that I discovered. However, the tribe that I use in the books, the Okanokans, their older religion was more shamanistic, and they had animal spirits. So part of that was the idea of this. They had this feud with the Sasquatch down from Canada before America was ever established, and because of that, they asked for help from their spirit gods, and the only one that replied was the wolf god. So he gives them the ability to turn into werewolves, and that ability is carried down through the generations via fairly several different ideas. I definitely melded a lot of different concepts into it, and I even reference a couple of Lovecraftian kind of shapeshifter concepts in it, but I make it very clear that there's the Lovecraftian ones. Now there's these shamanistic ones. And at some point, I'm going to do the old school Wolfman ones as well. So just like vampires have a lot of different regional myths and legends, werewolves do as well. I don't know that there are any specific to the Pacific Northeast. There are skinwalkers in Native American legend. They're similar
mm,
in concept, but not the same as werewolves. This is something entirely different.
yeah, they are similar in concept too. And then you also have the Wendigo myths too that are I'm
Yeah,
not sure how far down they go into the States, but they are in Canada too, which is
yeah,
it's sort of a shapeshifter,
yeah,
not entirely,
yeah,
but
yeah. Well, it's funny because when I was researching this, I wasn't sure how I was going to figure out how to get the Sasquatch in and everything. And it turns out that the Okanogan tribe, the language, their root language, is actually where we get the word Sasquatch from. So they quite literally named the Sasquatch, and this is where that name derived from, is from their language. So I was like, that's a happy accident. Running
Mm.
with that.
Yeah.
So then that was one of the things that sparked me using their original language throughout as much as I could without getting too egregious with it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Travis. How has he evolved from the first book?
So in the first book, he starts out this gruff detective who, is just in it for the money. He's just doing his job, has to rescue this girl, finds that he cares about people more than you think he does. And he comes and discovers this weird supernatural world. In this book, he's going to be, in this book, he's got a partner now. He's on the run, and ultimately he's still in that situation of, I need money, but at the same time he's like, I don't want to deal with all the supernatural crap either. The thing that kind of drags him into it is the threat to innocence that will suffer if he doesn't solve the mystery, that will ultimately result in a massive civil war between the Native American werewolves and the Canadian Sasquatch. So again, you have him kind of showing that side of him, he cares about innocent life and he'll do it to save people, but he's still going to be grumpy about it. He's still going to be like, I don't want to deal with this crap, and that's going to be a running theme throughout most of the books, of him just constantly being like, why do I keep finding these things, and just getting upset about it. So that's going to be like one of the long-standing gags of the story, is him just complaining while his partner, whoever he's working with, is going to be like, get over it. Let's get the job done.
Yeah,
So,
well, the best noir detectives are always a little grumpy, I think.
yeah,
So,
yeah, he's a cranky dude. He's going to be cranky for quite a while.
so what about your secondary characters? Has anyone followed Travis from the first book, and who's new to the story?
So, yes, someone does follow him from the first book. I don't want to say who, because again, it gives up one of the twists of the first book. Um, but there are new characters. There's the town sheriff who shows up. There's a town sheriff who's got a big role. There's the greedy lumber baron. There's the leader of the Native American werewolves. Michelle's got a massive. She takes place a bit. She takes a long bit of the story, and those are like the three central new characters. There's the town mayor, who's got who's very reminiscent of the mayor from Jaws, who's just concerned about the reputation and making sure money's coming in. There's representatives from the rail lines, because they had a lot of power at the time. There's a guy there who basically represents the lumber workers and the people who are working in the logging industry, who rely on the industry, even though it's something that the Native Americans and the Sasquatch really don't want to see happen. So yeah, there are a few new characters, but the main ones are the sheriff, the leader of the Native American werewolves, and the lumber baron, the leader lumber baron.
Okay, so what's your favorite scene in the book, without spoilers?
I mean, I think my favorite scene is probably the fight, the big fight. You know that there's going to be a big fight. I liked writing the big fight. I was waiting to get to that. Um, and then there are a couple really cool like investigation scenes that I got to do that I wasn't able to really put in. There's a couple scenes where basically Travis does that very PI sort of thing where he takes jobs from everybody and is basically using the one job the one mystery to kind of graft money off of everybody possible while investigating the same thing. So he's like setting up 3 or 4 different people who are going to pay him to solve the crime, when he's just investigating the same thing anyway. And everybody wants him to prove something one way or the other, and he's very much like, I'm investigating it and I'm going to prove whatever I prove, and you're still going to pay me. I don't really care what you want. So I like that idea of like him just being like, yeah, yeah, I'll take your money. Sure. And he just keeps just taking on the job because he's like, I'm already investigating it. So yeah, I'll take some more money. Bring it on. So he just keeps taking everyone's money, which I thought was fun.
Yeah, it is. I mean, why shouldn't he? I mean, if they want to
Yeah,
pay him.
I thought it was a very nice like Raymond Chandler, Sam Spade sort of thing to do, just to take
Yes.
the job from everybody.
So, did you find anything challenging about writing the book? Did a scene or a
Yeah, setting
character?
it in a real world place sucks. I'd much rather lie.
Yes,
Setting it in
that
a
is
real
easier.
town. Yeah, I mean, setting it in a real town that existed in 1929, that had buildings and streets and everything like that. I was like, oh my god, this is a pain in my butt. Luckily, thank God for historical societies. There was the Okanogan. There's a big town in Washington called Okanogan, and then there's the Okanogan tribe. So the town, and I think there's a county Okanogan, but the town of Okanogan has its own historical society that spreads down to Tonasket, where most of the story takes place. And that they were able to offer me tons of maps, a bunch of surveys, newspapers with lists of businesses and pictures of the towns and the streets and everything. So I was able to use a lot of that to reference stuff that, in all honesty, doesn't exist anymore. But if you travel to Tonasket, odds are you can walk the path that they walked, because most of those streets do still exist. Not the buildings, but the streets. Like one
Mm.
of the buildings was knocked down and is a CVS now, because I looked it up on Google. But that's about it. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, doing all that, doing the research, doing the actual language, and finding someone who was fluent in it, who could translate some of the phrases that I needed, and also tell me like what would be appropriate, what wouldn't be appropriate. That was really difficult. So staying respectful of actual people and actual places is really difficult, because it just requires a huge amount more research than me just making it up.
Oh yeah, yeah. Recreating the past is very difficult. You've
Yeah.
got to
So
you've got to make sure the roads are the names. Like if you're using a modern day reference, you have to go back and make sure that the roads in the modern day are the same
yeah,
names that they were in past history.
yeah,
Yeah,
looking up whether the roads were paved or gravel or cobblestone, like all those little
yeah.
details. I was just like, oh, I got to figure that out now. So I'd go and look at some maps and be like, that was paved, and stuff like that. I was
Mm.
just like, okay. So that's the harder thing. So for this new book, the new one is not doing that. I'm not doing that for number three.
Yeah, yeah.
I was
Stick
like,
it in a
number
little
four, we'll see what
fictional
happens,
town
but
and make it up.
number three is not happening in a real place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, my newest
But
book is in a fictional town. It's a real place, like it's a real area of Nova Scotia, but the town is totally fictional and
yeah,
based on at least 3 different places that are
yeah.
real. But
The new Travis Daniels, honestly, the way I set it up it got its own set of challenges now. So I was just like, oh, what did I do? I thought I made this easy on myself, and now I'm realizing I did not. So so it's, because I've set two books, and there's a kind of a format to them now that I have to stick to. And I kind of made a decision that makes sticking to that format a little bit more difficult. So I was like, okay, that was not a good choice, but it is what it is. I'm gonna run with it.
okay, so why did you decide to write in the horror genre and have you branched out into other genres?
So I guess the decision to write in horror really came from the opportunity to write in horror. I was writing fantasy for years, wasn't getting anywhere with it. Went to a couple conventions. I went specifically to Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia. Met a friend of mine, Jim Moore, who I dedicate this book to. Jim invited me to a show in the Northeast called Nikon. I went to that, and while there, I met some more people and got to talking to somebody. And I had written a weird, dark short story about Christmas, and somebody was doing a Christmas anthology, and they said, send it to me. So I was like, okay, send it off. They picked it up and they published it. The next year, they did another one. I sold them another one. And then I started writing a couple more horror stories. Those got picked up by various places. And then slowly but surely, it kind of built in momentum until, I kind of became a horror author. But I still am writing fantasy. I have a young adult fantasy that I'm editing right now. I'm trying to get it under 100,000 words. I just finished the rough draft of a urban fantasy kind of folklore worldwide adventure thing. And I've got some ideas. I have an idea for a dark fantasy, kind of a dark horror fantasy thing, no novel novella. So it's like, I kind of am bouncing around. I fully intend to never stick to a genre. Anyone who read the first book, who reads Travis Daniels 2, who reads Murder in Monashee Mountains, is going to be like, wow, this is different. And I guarantee you're going to pick up 3 and go, wow, this is different. Because I get easily bored. So I wrote my Lovecraft story. And until I can think of a really cool spin on a next one, I'm probably not going to write another Lovecraft Travis Daniels until I come up with a really cool twist that I think will be fun. In the meantime, I've got all this other stuff to explore. I can do vampires. I can do a lot of different. I can do chupacabra and stuff like that. So it's going to be like me kind of playing around with the world, really establishing it, building up all these different things. But there is a much larger story, because I'm a big fan of episodic TV. There is going to be a much larger story that is stringed throughout the whole thing. So there's going to be one big arc for people who stick to the whole book, all the books. So while there'll be kind of different concepts for each book's going to have a very similar through line and reference back to certain things for people who are following along book to book.
Okay. Is there a facet of writing fiction that's tricky for you in general?
Emotional resonance. I I just spoke about this at StokerCon. I have a hard time with emotional resonance because I'm a little neurodivergent, and I kind of process emotions much differently than most people. So whenever I'm putting those emotional core moments into a book, it takes a lot of thought from me. I have to sit down and do a pass strictly to manage emotional resonance throughout the story and making sure that my characters are reacting to things appropriately. Like, I don't want to have Mary Sue kind of characters who are faced with horror and just kind of take it in stride and go, okay. And, just can't process the terror. That's boring. Somebody who
Mhm.
just reacts logically constantly is a very boring hero, is a very boring, victim, whatever. So I need to go through and make sure that I have the emotions appropriate, but not overblown into melodrama. So there's where I kind of have a problem of just making sure I'm following that very thin line to get it right. So that normally takes me an entire rewrite and just focused on that and nothing else. But that's probably the hardest thing for me in terms of like craft.
Yeah, emotional resonance can be hard for a lot of people. I would think it's even harder when you have issues with it.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite aspect of being a writer?
The freedom of it. I mean, yeah. I'm lucky. I always tell people I cheat. My wife has a really good job, and we have really good benefits through her job. So I get to stay home and write and goof around and play. So that and I don't have the stress that I think a lot of writers have of, they have a full-time job during the day, then they come home and then they got to find time at night to write while juggling family, while juggling, health and things like that. Whereas my day job is writing, and I make enough right now as a writer to pay for it. So my writing pays for itself at this point and makes a little bit. But my and I can reinvest my money constantly back into it. I'm not taking money from the family or building debt, which is nice, and I'm working on building that up even further. But if I had to like support a family on my writing, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm lucky in that regard, and I constantly say I'm very much cheating. I'm my wife's personal assistant. That's my full time job. So yeah, I like the freedom of it, but I like the idea of I get to create, I get to have fun, I get to sit in the basement and just type and really just get my thoughts on paper, and it's nice. And I don't have anyone telling me what to do. I think the hardest thing about that though was getting into the habit of going downstairs and treating it like a real job, because there is all that freedom. There is none of that pressure of somebody being like clock in, produce, produce. You're your own boss. You need to clock in and produce every day, because otherwise you're never going to make any money. So right now, like I do 1,400 words a day, Monday through Friday, and I'm working my way up to 2,000, working my way up to Stephen King levels of processing words and of writing. And it's and then I try to edit double that every day. So I'm always editing more than I'm putting down. And yeah, it's a process and it takes time. And once you get used to it though, it's like any other job, except I don't have someone breathing down my neck. I really just have bills that I have to worry about. But even then I'm kind of like, we're actually pretty comfortable. We're okay. So it's a very privileged way for me to. I'm in a very privileged position as an indie author, unlike a lot of other people. Like I understand how massively difficult it is for a lot of other people.
Yeah, it can be. So, who are some of your favorite authors?
Uh, yeah, my favorite authors rarely ever change. Sometimes they get added to, but it's mostly is it Mark Twain, Ray Bradbury, Kurt Vonnegut. I love Haruki Murakami. I'm a big Haruki Murakami fan. I'm trying to avoid some of the cliche people. You
Yes.
know,
Well, you can say Stephen King here. Everybody does.
yeah, I know. Well, yeah. Honestly, here's the thing. I do enjoy Stephen King, but I think there are writers who I hold a little bit above him, and that would Haruki Murakami, Vonnegut, Bradbury, Twain. I love those guys. Those are the people I emulate. I do have a fascination with how Stephen King approaches stories, and I've recently started rereading his stuff in chronological order just to make sure I get through everything. So I'm reading it from the first book all the way through, and I'm curious to see how it evolves because I'm very interested in his process because I know he's a pantser, which throws me every time, and I'm really curious about what makes his stuff so popular. And that's not a diss on him. I'm just trying to break it down in my head. Like, what is he doing differently that gets him this like perennial, this evergreen popularity that a lot of other writers can't seem to emulate? So I'm looking at it from that point of view and just curious to see how that works. But like when I read Haruki Murakami, it's like I read his stuff and I'm like, this is really well crafted. So yeah, I do really enjoy Stephen King. It's just I don't know if he hasn't become that writer that I look at and go, oh, I see the craft here. Okay, I get it now. And then it becomes like he's my favorite author because I figured out how he's doing this, and now I have lessons to learn that I can kind of take it apart and figure it out. I like taking things apart and kind of working out how they work.
Mm.
It's very scientific way of approaching art, but it works for the way my brain works.
Yeah, well, it also teaches you. I mean, the best way to learn the craft is to actually just study it. So,
Yeah. And yeah, and I've been writing I've been lately on my Patreon, I've been writing craft articles and I've been doing mostly story structure. So I started out at 3-act structure. Just now writing 2 articles about Save the Cat, and then I'm going to go back to Hero's Journey and break that down. So it's like I'm breaking everything down in a very analytical, academic way where, there are a lot of craft books that talk it more of an artsy way. I was like, I
yeah,
want to break this down to like almost like engineering level so that somebody can look at it and go, "Oh, I see how the little cogs work."
yes, those cogs are very important. You should learn
Yeah.
how they
So
work.
knowing how those cogs work allows you to improvise. It's like understanding how Legos go together and building some Lego builds via the instructions gives you some ideas of techniques of way to click things together. And looking at the inners of a watch shows you ways of putting gears together and how they set timing and everything. Knowing that allows somebody to pull it apart and then say, okay, maybe I could do it this way. And now you can start playing with all those little Legos and playing with all those gears and finding something new. So I
Mm.
think it's important to understand, like people say, you have to know the rules before you can break the rules. I'm very much like, I'm going to break apart all this stuff, look at how it works. And then I can say, oh, but I think I could do this better if I do it this way. And then I
Yeah,
can start messing around.
yeah, and once you know how it works and you're familiar with it, then it becomes almost instinctual too
Yeah.
to do it. So it's very helpful to do that. So, tell us about some of the other books you've written.
So Portrait of a Nuclear Family was is a very dark psychological horror book. That one is Wanda, the mother, discovers that her older son is doing some dark stuff in the woods because she's very cognizant of what other people think and her reputation in the neighborhood. She tries to hide it and tries to deal with it without bringing anybody into it, and that doesn't end well for her or anybody else. And the rest of the book is a very slow descent into insanity. Nothing good happens to anybody. Is not there. The good guys do not win. It ends dark. Then the other book I wrote, which was my collection, the short story collection, it's a collection of short stories. It's a lot of different horror. I've got body horror in it, existential horror, quiet horror. I've got a mashup horror where Nietzsche meets up with Van Helsing and they fight a Baba Yaga in the woods. So it's some wild stuff. I've got a retelling of the Three Billy Goats Gruff. So there's a lot of different things that everybody who reads it generally finds something in it they like. You may not like all of them because they're incredibly different, but you will like some of them. And the ones you do like you'll like a lot because that seems to be the pattern. There are people who really like the whole thing, but everyone's got like their two or three favorites that they're just like, this one was amazing. So I'm like, okay, cool. And and a lot of the ones that people pick, I'm very shocked by because some of them, like people are like, this is my favorite one. I'm like, really? Not my favorite one.
Yeah, it's amazing what readers will pick out of a collection. On
Yeah, I,
some,
I remember somebody picked one, and I was like, I honestly almost didn't include that in the book because I was really worried about that one.
yeah, because the author favorites and the reader favorites are almost never the same.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's picked my favorite story out of that collection as their favorite. Everyone asks me, and I'm like, it's this one, and they go, really? I'm like, I love that story.
Yeah, like one of my collections, the story that involved a wishing well. A lot of people like that one. I hated it, and but I hated it because it was such a pain to write. So
Oh yeah,
because there are those stories when it's like they give you so much trouble
yeah,
that by the end you just no, just publish it and never look at it
yeah.
again.
I got a new short story coming out, not on my Patreon because I do one a month on Patreon, but I've got a new one coming out I believe this month, roughly very shortly after the Travis Daniels after Murder comes out. The I've got a short story coming out in Contact 3 War is Hell anthology. So it's an anthology of military horror. I've got a new story in that coming out this month sometime.
Okay, so what
Join my
else?
Patreon. You'll find out when I find out.
What else have you got coming up next?
That's about it. I got a level rough drafts. I've got the YA fantasy that I'm trying to pitch, that I'm trying to rewrite so I can pitch, and I'm working on Travis Daniels 3 for Crystal Lake. So, I mean, honestly, almost all of my new work is going up on the Patreon. That's like kind of the big thing right now. Is I am putting a lot of time and effort into the Patreon. I do one short story for five, so you can join for free and just get like a weekly check-in, which is one thing I'm really trying to get a community built on. Is I want people to join it so that like I can have a community check-in coming in. So every week when I post, I say, "Oh, here's how many words I've written. Tell me how many words you've written this week, or tell me how many pictures you've drawn this week, or whatever. Tell me what you did this week. What are your accomplishments? Let's celebrate that together." So I've been trying really hard to build that up, and that's a free version of the Patreon. And then the paid one, $5 a month, gets you one short story. Like every Wednesday, I post something. So one week is a short story. One week is generally some sort of essay or article about something going on. So I've written articles about book bans and AI, and then I've got personal essays about definitive moments in my life, things like that. The following week, the third week, is usually the chapter in the ongoing book that I'm winging. So that's an adventure. Um, and then the final week, the fourth week, is always a craft article. And I've got craft articles planned out for quite a while. So right now, that's kind of where a lot of my time is going when it's not going into the book. Yeah. So yeah, the Patreon is the big deal right now. That's where a lot of things are happening. But in the meantime, I'm working on the YA. If I can sell that, that's a 7-book fantasy series, hopefully. So that's the thing I'm working on, and then eventually I'll rewrite. I've got a couple of alpha readers going over the new urban fantasy. So once they hit back to me, that'll be the next thing I probably go in and rewrite as soon as I finish the rough draft, first draft of Travis Daniels. I started Travis Daniels 3, got about, I don't know, say like a third of the way through it, and realized that I needed to change a bunch of stuff. So I just started back at the beginning, and I've been rewriting it from the beginning and fixing all that stuff as I go. And I'm getting a better handle on how I want to do the book. Like I said, there's a much different way of telling the story. So I was like, I have to figure this out. And I think I have a handle on it now. So we'll see. Once I finish it, I'll probably look at it and go, I really need to do this differently. And then I'll be rewriting it again. Like it's just how it goes, you know?
Yeah, that happens. That's couple of times with me too. Characters have suddenly come and said, "Nope, nope, I'm doing this now." So I've had to go back and fix some things. And
Yeah, for me, it's a flow thing, at least for this book. I'm trying to make it flow properly and make it interesting for what it is. I mean, I can say it's a haunted house story. So the book takes place entirely in one house. And I'm kind of like, how am I going to keep this interesting?
yeah,
So
that structure, that enclosed structure is kind of
it makes it, yeah, there's a lot of limitations to it that and all the books so far generally had chapter headings of locations of where that chapter takes place or major groups or characters that chapter involves. So a lot of my chapter headings are looking like the rooms off of a clue board. So I'm trying to like
well, that
make
might
that
actually work
work.
for a mystery, but
Right. It's kind of, yeah. So it's like it kind of plays into it. But and then like, but then I have all this other, I have like a few other elements in it that I'm really mixing in. And I'm just trying to figure out a really engaging way to do it that's not tedious. And so yeah, I think I've got a couple ways of doing it. It's just a matter of okay, let me build this up because it's a abandoned haunted house with two people, excuse me, two living people in it. And following these two people around could potentially get boring. So I'm kind of like, how can I make this a little bit more interesting and a little bit more engaging? So that's some of the stuff I'm playing with right now and trying to figure out like, and I'm reading a bunch of haunted house books. I'm actually reading The Shining right now because I'm like, how do you do this right? So it's like, again, Stephen King, it's like, I'm up to The Shining, third book. I'm like, well, let's read The Shining. It's good timing because I need to figure out how to do this right.
yeah, I'm in the bit of the same boat because I'm currently plotting out a book that's on an island, like a small island with a lighthouse. But I'm doing a dual timeline with that, so
Yep.
that's sort of breaking up the monotony there. So
I'm kind of trying to do a dual timeline and I'm trying to work out how to do it right. I'm like, how do I
yeah,
pace this just right? So it's one of those things. It's like I'll work it out. I'll get it. I definitely tried to emulate some things I've read and went, oh, I did that wrong. That was a bad idea to try and emulate that book, but I'll work it out. So yeah,
yeah,
but I've been reading The Shining right now. I'm reading The Shining and I'm finishing up a collection of Algernon Blackwood. And so and I actually and there's some references from his books or from his short stories in the book, and one where I very much like Lovecraft's world is real in this universe. Well, so is Algernon Blackwood's universe is also real in this. So the one of the characters is reading the life and times of John Silence, who is one of his recurring characters in Paranormal Investigator, and they're reading his basically biography in the book, or they mention his biography as if he was a real person.
oh, that's
So
cute.
it's like I get to play with little things like that where I like kind of playing around with history and making fictional characters real in this world. So very League of Extraordinary Gentlemen sort of activity, except for horror. Well, League actually had horror in it too, so that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll wrap the interview up here. I'd like to thank you for being a guest today. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks. It's always fun to talk.
Okay, and that's it for this episode, and bye for now.
See you later, guys.